Okay, so I'm gonna mute everybody now. Enjoy the service.
Go. Go.
We light our virtual chalice this morning to the words of Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us of that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It's our reminder that all is connected even through the space of the void is vast. And our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness and in our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, the pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester's online Sunday morning worship service. We're glad that you've joined us virtually this morning. It's an act of love that we gather in this way once again during this time of pandemic response. We begin by that in Worcester, Massachusetts, we work, learn, live, and worship on the seized ancestral homeland of the Nipmuc people, who survive and remain active as the Nipmuc Nation. We hope that the service gives you an opportunity to pause for a few minutes to reflect in community so that we might care for each other, take a moment to reflect on our own well-being, and discover opportunities for spiritual refreshment and service in the wider world, even as we are at a personal distance. We gather this way this morning in solidarity with those families in our community who have been exposed or diagnosed with COVID-19 in the recent days. The health and safety team has met recently to assess plans for the coming weeks and is recommending that we stay online through February 13th. It was our intention to return to online and in-person service on February 12th. However, the news this morning is that we are in the process of reviewing a bid to replace the furnace that services the sanctuary lounge and middle school room behind the sanctuary that failed 2 weeks ago and unfortunately filled the sanctuary and the rest of the church with carbon monoxide. In the process of reviewing what needed to be done in order to repair that furnace, it was discovered that we would need to replace the furnace because parts are no longer available for the service to service the old furnace. It's our hope and it was our intention to have that replacement done by February 20th. However, we have been stalled by the availability of parts and by changes to the initial plan related to the replacement of that furnace. So it is our sincere hope and we will strive mightily to finish this project no later than the end of this month. And in hopes that we could return within the next couple of weeks to both in-person and online service. I hope that everyone appreciates the fact that in-person service in a sanctuary in February without heat is probably not conducive to anyone's comfort or health. So we will keep you informed throughout the course of the next couple of weeks as to the progress of this project and any communications that need to happen related to it. So that we might come to know you better, please list your name on your video feed as you're able. Please note that this service is being live streamed on Facebook and be recorded for future availability on our YouTube channel as well as our website Worship Archive. Following the service this morning, you are invited to join us for a virtual fellowship hour. Once again, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Our opening words today are by Marilyn Maciel. I, you, us, them, those people. Wouldn't it be lovely if one could live in a constant state of we? Some of the most commonplace words can be some of the biggest dividers. They. What if there was no they? What if there was only us? If words could be seen as they floated out of our mouths, would we feel no shame as they passed beyond our lips? If we were to string our words on a communal clothesline, would we feel proud of our thoughts flapped in the breeze?
Our opening hymn this morning is number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire, presented to us this morning by Michael Tassi. Please join in the comfort of your worship space.
to all inspire and have not love. My words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess and striving so my love profess, but be not given by love within. Thy prophets soon turn strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are free.
I want to welcome Robin Mitskovich to our service this morning to share with us a moment of religious exploration. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning. Well, this morning, we asked the question, why Black History Month? We talked about inventors and inventors that we can name off the top of our heads. And then we discussed people who we don't know who invented things that are very important to us today, like air conditioning and the ice cream scoop and traffic lights, the stethoscope, and many other very needed and helpful things. And those inventors were of African-American descent and Black people that are from America that have not been lifted up. Black history is a way to teach students and the world about accomplishments of Black people in our country. And it is seen as the celebration of who has impacted the world with their achievements and their activism, spotlighting it in February to go beyond discussions of slavery and highlight Black leadership and achievements. A question was brought up, why only in February? And we discussed, as UUs, we have the power and the initiative and the charge to lift up Black achievement and history all the time, because only then can we dismantle systemic racism and hope to bring education and light to the fact that we are all inherently worthy and dignified in this world. And we also learned about a Black UU, Fannie Barrier Williams, who brought her voice and her talents into the church, into the UU church, and gave a famous speech called Religious Duty to the Negro, saying that churches should do a better job of practicing what they were preaching when it came to justice for Black people. Thank you.
Robin, thank you so much for that. This morning, we are also very pleased to have Mara Pentlarge with us, who is part of our 8th Principal Task Force. It's our intention over the course of the next number of months to pause at least monthly to invite an 8th Principal reflection. And I apologize to the task force that I neglected to include that slide this morning introducing this segment, but I am so pleased to have Mara with us this morning to talk with us and share an 8th Principal moment as a part of our ongoing effort to consider ways in which we might embody our commitment to anti-racism, multiculturalism, and anti-oppression here at UUCW and in the world at large. Good morning, Mara.
Hi, thank you for that for that kind introduction. Eighth principle moment, everyone has a story that can change the outlook of life for someone else, and everyone's story matters. So this is a story told to me by a friend who was at the church but has moved away. She's, I checked with her, she said, sure, you could tell them about that. One Sunday, about 10 years ago, I came to church and stood at the back of the sanctuary to see where I wanted to sit. Matt had already started playing the prelude, so I was quiet. I saw a Black woman sitting alone in a pew, so I thought, great, I'll sit next to her and be friendly. Maybe she'll want to join the church. I had already made 2 assumptions about her based on the racism I had accumulated in my head from the racism in the society. 1, that she probably didn't know much about Unitarian Universalism, and 2, that she probably didn't have very much money. I smiled at her as I stepped into her pew. I didn't realize I had made these assumptions, my friend says. I smiled at her as I stepped into the pew and then pointed out the place on the order of service where it says newcomers don't have to pitch into the offering. I like that. I like that it says that on the order of service every week. And I was happy to have a chance to show a new person she doesn't have to give us money. She smiled politely and looked away. When the collection plate was coming around, again, I pointed it out to her more clearly in case she hadn't understood the first time. She looked uncomfortable and put money in the plate. At the end of the service, we talked briefly. She told me she was a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church in an Eastern Massachusetts town and was moving to Worcester and trying to find another UU church. I never saw her again. Thank you.
Mara, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As is the intention of these stories, it is an opportunity for us to reflect on the ways in which we both rise to the challenge of a history in which we have been encultured into forms of racism and oppression, but also the ways in which we can often fall short and not realize it. And it is an opportunity for us to consider that wide spectrum of experience and to hear the voices of those and the stories of those who often don't get an opportunity to reflect such truths in our common experience. So I want to thank you very much for that. I want to share with you a part of a taped interview between the Reverend Tracy Blackman and the Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas. For those of you who read the nugget that I wrote 2 weeks ago, you will understand that I have been moved by the words of the Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, who is the canon theologian at the National Cathedral and is Dean of Episcopal Divinity School at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. She is indeed a leader in the field of womanist theology, racial reconciliation, and the Black Church. Tracy Blackman is Executive Minister of Justice and Witness Ministries, the United Church of Christ, and Senior Pastor of Christ the King United Church of Christ in Florissant, Montana. I want to share with you simply about a 5-minute, or maybe it's a 7-minute segment of this interview as a means of helping us understand both the role of the church and the responsibility that we have as faithful people, the role of faith communities. And Reverend Blackman has just asked in this segment Dr. Douglas to describe the role of the church So let me see if I can share my screen properly here. And go from there.
To the current ills of our society.
Yeah, you ask such easy questions, don't you, Dr. Tracy Blackman, that one can't write a whole dissertation on and still not get to the answer. What a good question, but I think it's a perennial question. One, I should say, and it's a question, by the way, that I've taken up in a different way in my forthcoming book in the fall. It'll be out in the fall. And it is precisely this question. And you were right. Yes, the book is called Resurrection Hope, A Future Where Black Lives Matter.
Yes, go ahead.
and I wrestle with my faith, and hence the meaning of not simply what it means to be Christian, but church. And in fact, devote an entire chapter to just this question of what it means to be church. And I think, Tracy, as you've heard me say before, I really think that calling ourselves church is aspirational and something we must live into, because it does mean showing forth in a real way the future that is God's, that is not yet. It means, you know, living, as I like to say, theologically, proleptically, as if, showing that as if reality. Yeah. Now, what does that mean? And I'll get to the, you know, they say, oh, that sounds all good and head theologically, but how's that look on the ground? What's that look like? What's the church supposed to get involved in? What that ultimately means, and then we'll come down, is that it's to be church means to expand the moral imaginary of what justice looks like. Expand the moral imaginary of what's possible. Because what we call justice as human beings, we know, particularly if we talk to the people who don't see it or on the underside of it, it's not justice. And so what does that look like? We have to expand. That's the church. We're to be guided by God's vision of a more just future, not by our vision of a more just future, which sort of looks like more privileges for some, right? And not justice, where everybody is able to indeed flourish and live into their full humanity, which means that everybody has their human needs not simply met, but indeed satisfied, right? So that they can.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because I'm with you. How does one imagine that?
Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
Yeah. Yes. So how do we? Here's the only way that I know to imagine that, Tracy. And I think I've said this to you before, and it's become more significant to me as of late. And that is, you imagine a world where you are withholding from nobody else that which you would not want withheld from yourself. If we start there, right? And we say, I don't want a decent house or food to eat, health care, certain opportunities. I don't want that withheld from myself. Then don't withhold it from another, and then go about constructing a world that does just that, does not withhold from another that which you would not withhold from yourself. And we aren't simply talking about the material realities, right? Either. We're talking about, you know what? I want to feel affirmed in who I am.
as a human being, the human being I was created to be. I want to feel not simply that Black Lives Matter and so I can get a house and I want to do all that, but that they matter because you look at my ivory graced embodied self and you say it's good, and I mean it.
Yeah.
And the same, think of people when I think of, people who are LGBTQ plus persons. Don't you want to feel good about yourself? Don't you want to be able to feel affirmed? Then don't withhold that from other people. So it's not simply material, but it's the non-material realities of what it also means to be human. To me, that's what a just world, that's the beginnings of a just world. And then you ask, how do you get there? And cut in, don't let me go on too long at all, but to track back to your other question, it's should the church be involved in policy making and all of that kind of thing? I learned, as I'm learning every day, I had a conversation. It's a book you must read if you have not read it. You've probably read it because of the work you do. Matthew Desmond's Evicted. Have you read that book?
I have that book, but I have not read it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
It
we
is.
had him as a keynote speaker at General Synod a few years ago. I have the book, but I have
It's a must read.
Okay.
And he takes you really through the lives of sort of 8 people, 8 families, because it's more than 8 people, and their connections. But he said to me, we were talking, and just almost this question you asked, and I asked what the church's role was, and he says, the church can't do policy. That's the role of the government and other governmental agencies. But, the church can, on an individual level, help provide for people. But what the church has to do is to hold those who can do it accountable.
Yeah.
Which you do. We hold them, we say, that's not justice. What? We have lost our moral imaginary, and so we have to be that, we have to stand in that moral gap. There's a role for the church, and it's that moral role that doesn't let a nation settle for an unjust justice. And that's, to me, we've lost our voice. Because Tracy, I'll shut up here. We talk about political lobbies in this country, right? And we know that one reason we haven't been able to get, just people to have a decent gun control bill is because the NRA is such a strong lobby, right? And other political lobbies. As religious institutions, we can't be a political lobby. Mm-hmm. But my goodness gracious sakes alive, we can be a moral lobby. Okay. We can hold them people would imagine if we all came together as a moral lobby. Mm-hmm. and had our moral power felt, and if you do that, that's the way the right has, they know how to organize. And it's like, we put people in office, that's the Black church put with Black church, just once again, save democracy. So yeah. So we can, right, and you're right, we've always been a social god. We've just saved Black women in particular, just saved democracy once again. So we can be a moral lobby.
So you spoke to the word.
More on this later. I want to invite Denise Darragrand to come onto the screen, and I want to welcome her, not just as the former president of our congregation and one of the folks that helps to facilitate our Loaves and Fishes task force, but also as president of the LGBT Asylum task that's housed
Thanks, Aaron. So I think as most of you know, the LGBT Asylum Task Force is about 14 years old. And we basically support people who've had to leave their countries because of threats of violence, because of their sexuality. In 80 countries around the world, it's still illegal to be LGBT. And in fact, in Uganda last year, the president declared open season on LGBT people and said, you can do anything you want to them, including kill them, and you will not be held accountable. And that's the world that a lot of our LGBT people live in. And so they stand it for as long as they can. And after they've been stabbed or beaten, or their parents' houses have been burnt down because they're the parent of an LGBT person, or in many cases are women who have been correctively raped, which is what they call it, because after all, once you've had sex with a man, why would you ever want to have sex with a woman again? And people ask me sometimes, why do LGBT people have children? And in 10 out of 10 cases, to be honest, it's because of the corrective rape. So that's another thing that holds them to their countries and doesn't allow them to leave. They are incredibly accomplished people. We have lawyers, doctors, engineers, et cetera, but they can't tolerate being in their country anymore because they will be killed. So they come here, they find us, and we provide them with shelter and stipends and all kinds of support. This year has been a really good year for the task force, and that after 4 years of fundraising, we finally were able to purchase a gorgeous house on the west side of Worcester, and now have 11 asylum seekers living in there who found a new level of safety and freedom. We get new people every day. We recently had an Associated Press article written about us, which made its way across the world, which means that we are now not only getting more support from people across the world, but we're also getting asylum seekers seeking help from countries that we've never seen before. So we're being inundated with people asking for our help, because we are, as far as we know, the most comprehensive organization and provides the most support of any organization within the country. So bottom line, all of this costs us $40,000 a month to provide a roof over their heads, food, and a small stipend to keep them going as they work toward getting their work permits and moving on with their lives in the States. So $40,000 a month is a lot, and most of that comes from individual donors. So we ask for your support. We ask for your help in any way. And one of the things that I will put out there is, in addition to the funding that we need, we also need help with helping our asylum seekers find decent jobs. There's still a lot of discrimination, both because of the racial issues, as well as them being non-Americans. And we're finding that left and right, with people unwilling to hire our asylum seekers at the level to which they are capable of doing. So keep that in your minds too. If you hear of openings of jobs, if you can provide a mentorship in your field to any of the asylum seekers, that would be incredibly great. It would be incredibly appreciated. So again, dig into your pockets if you can, and offer your help in whatever else way you can. Thanks very much.
Denise, thank you very much for all of that and for the continuing efforts of the Asylum Task Force. I want to encourage you to participate in this morning's offering by either texting 508-231-5335 or by visiting our website, www.uucworcester.org/donate. At this time, our morning offering will be received. We come to that time in our service when we're given an opportunity to pause and consider that which is deepest in our hearts or most profoundly on our minds or in the work of our hands. In the days that have transpired or in the prospect of days to come, joys and sorrows that touch us deeply and are given another measure of meaning because of our capacity to share them in the midst of a company that claims us as a co-journeyer. So I invite those of you who have joys or sorrows this morning to either raise your virtual hand or open your microphone so that I might call on you in order, and that you would begin by telling us first who you are so that those who might not know you will come to know you better. Are there joys or sorrows to be shared this day? See, Diane Mann.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday evening at about 6 p.m., Harper Olivia Pulowski, my first grandchild, was born. She's doing fine. My daughter's a little under the weather because it was a C-section, and that is my joy. My sorrow is that while that is happening this week, I'm very close to my sister in Florida, and her husband had a significant stroke about a week ago, and he is likely to die today. So it's been a little life and death at my house this week, and I want to thank everybody in this congregation who has held me up. Thanks very much.
Blessings to you, Diane, on this tremendous and terrible life journey. We hold you and your family in celebration for the arrival of new life and in celebration of the lives that have been lived well. I want to share, Laura Lenihan writes this morning, today I am 7 years cancer-free. Congratulations to Laura, and if anyone else has a joy or sorrow that they'd like me to share, you're welcome to put it in the chat or to place it online in for those of you who are on Facebook, and I'll invite Cheryl Lachey to read any of those that come across. Maya Desai.
Yeah, hi. Let me, am I unmuted? You can hear me, right? Hi, everybody. I love you, Diane, more than I ever did before, which was a lot. But I wanted to share my joy, which is that Lois, my daughter, who's a senior in high school, performed the lead of Lily Garland in this play, 20th Century, last night, and she was transformed in more ways than one. And it was joy, and Ruth got to come and see her for a little bit. And there is another show today. If anybody, I can put it in the chat, if anybody would like to come at 2 o'clock, it is a madcap comedy and it is delightful. It's at St. John's, not too far. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to Lois. What a wonderful opportunity. Let's see here. Matt Johnson.
Yes. I wanted to let folks in the church know of something that's going on with me. I have recently, over the past couple of months, been diagnosed with heart problems. And later this week, it seems, I'll be going into surgery to fix those. Luckily, what I have is something that it's possible to fix. But what that means is that it's likely that I will be gone from my role as music director for about 3 months. They tell you that you're not supposed to do certain things, among them driving. And who knew that playing the piano and conducting were among the things that are also not supposed to happen for a period. So I I've been advised that I should not plan to come back for at least 3 months, and it could possibly be longer than that. We've made arrangements for my musical responsibilities to be carried in my absence. In the meantime, some folks have asked if there's anything that you can do. From those of you who work in this way, any prayers or thoughts in terms of my operation and my recovery would be gratefully received. The road back from this is, it's expected to be, kind of long. But I'm very hopeful that at the end of it, I'll be kind of better prepared to meet the challenges of life than I am at this present moment. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this church and to be able to share music. And I look forward to being able to do that in the future as well.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to assure the congregation that Matt has been in communication with me and the staff, and that we are going to be working in the coming weeks with Deb Bono as accompanist and Rachel Wagner as choir director pro tem. As we move back into in-person as soon as we can, we hope that our music program will reflect both the brilliance and the integrity that Matt has brought to that program while we are in his absence, and we will continue to update the congregation on Matt's progress, as well as opportunities to be able to reflect our love to him in meaningful ways over the course of the next coming months. This is a process that is in service to Matt's health and well-being, and we are all about that, as we are that for each of us. So blessings to you, Matt, many and abundant prayers, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming months when that opportunity arises, and look forward to you returning in ways that provide the kind of energy and creativity that so much governs your life. Are there other joys or sorrows today? Cheryl?
I have some from Facebook. And I would add that they were also, I am aware that because Matt shares his screen so that we are able to see things, he's never able to see the chat, and it's echoed on Facebook. We love you, Matt. We're praying for you, and we're there for you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Cheryl. Are there other joys or sorrows this morning? Let us be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, source of our inner and outermost being, we come this day with grand petitions. We would ask for thriving health and wholeness for those that have arrived on this planet and who are a blessing to their families and to the communities that surround them. We would celebrate this moment of new arrival with cheers, with tenderness, with care, and with our continued service that our world might be a place where all life can thrive. And we offer, as we surround those who experience the conclusion of life on this plane, the solace of community, the love of heart-filled embrace. And opportunities continue to keep the memory of those who have touched us so deeply alive in our hearts and in our minds and in our hands. And we extend this day a congratulations to those who continue to reflect creativity in the lives that they lead in our community, and who continue to inspire and aspire to great things. We would reach out with congratulations those whose health has been achieved and continues. And we would be mindful this day of the health that we continue to strive for, and that we would surround all of those on paths toward wholeness and healing and recovery to that destination as quickly and as lovingly as possible. This day in particular, our friend and colleague, Matt. Let us also remember all that which has gone unsaid this morning, but is no less real, right, good, or true. That those needful of healing have access to that power. That those who strive for justice remember that they stand not alone. And for those who continue to strive to find a place where their love is cherished, that place be found. For all of this and for so much more, we give great and abiding thanks this day. Amen, and blessed be. This morning, I'm inspired by the brilliant and prophetic voice of three women whose experience and insight have been formed by navigating the treacherous and tumultuous territory of race in America, among a variety of things. We've been introduced to two of them through the video reading I shared earlier in the service. The questions and responses at the heart of the conversation between the Reverend Tracy Blackman and the Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas continue to be generative for me. What is it that we as faith communities are called to be in this epochal moment in our history? Where do we position ourselves in relation to all that is both a threat and an opportunity to the well-being of humankind and our planet? The answer, quite simply, is to evaluate our position and our perspective through the lens of one of the oldest and most revered ethical ideals in human history, the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the manner in which it is stated in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 12. It's a rendering of the ancient Hebraic commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. The ancient rabbis reflected on this ethic in the Talmud through stories like one attributed to the great Rabbi Hillel, who was approached by a Gentile and asked to be taught the entire Torah while standing on one foot. The revered rabbi responded, "Whatever is hateful and distasteful to you, do not do to your fellow man. This is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go study." I hear the echo of this teaching in the rendering of the rule by Dr. Douglas. Do not withhold from another that which you do not wish to have withheld from yourself. What binds these two renderings together for me is the thou shalt not flavor of both of them, reflecting the orientation of much of that which has come to be known as the Ten Commandments. Furthermore, Douglas's rendering, like Hillel, begins by giving us a pause to consider our own lives and what we require to feel safe, secure, prosperous, and affirmed. It is this moment of self-reflection that is important to me as a beginning to understand how we are invited to be in the world with others. What is it that I truly value in relationship to my own well-being? I ponder. The potential problem with this rendering, however, is that it is informed from the limited scope of our own experience. To be fully embodied, perhaps we might consider rendering it slightly differently. Do not withhold from another that which the other understands as necessary for their own well-being. Here it is not one's own experience that is paramount. Here one is invited to a deeper listening and an understanding of the needs of another as they are expressed by the other. Such a rendering forces the focus away from the lens of our own experience and invites us to consider experiences that are potentially outside the realm of our own. This is particularly important as Dr. Douglas reflects later on in her conversation with Reverend Blackman, that in our country, 75% of white Americans do not have one close friend of color that they can name. And in the instances where that is not true, where friendships are forged, still 91% of the friendships in that circle continue to be white. The ethic thus is rendered to support the need for proximity, for closeness, intimacy, if you will, in reflecting on what is necessary for humankind to thrive. We must know each other's experience. The challenge, I think, is when this rendering of the rule gets twisted to support and affirm ways of being that are never intended to be reflected by the ethic. Ways that continue to divide and support the inequity and inequality that continues to plague our communities, our country, and our world. Here I am inspired by the brilliance and perspective of R.L. Mako, a lawyer, discernment coach, and blogger from New York. In a piece entitled How the Golden Rule Interprets Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter, she says the following, and I apologize that it is a lengthy quote. The Golden Rule is rather simple, she writes. I will respect you and you will respect me, period. The rule does not take into consideration your race, your gender, your ethnicity, your sexual preference, education, culture, social status, or anything else. If we are to take into account anything other than the one common denominator that we are all human beings, we now enter the slippery slope of leaving the realm of objectivity and entering into the realm of subjectivity. Leaving the realm of objectivity is wrong because now we are creating a false narrative. The fact that we are all human is the one and only fact that we share together. It is our universal connector. Adding subjective considerations onto the golden rule only serves to validate some at the expense of others. She continues, do you understand how we could change the world just by simply following this rule in our daily lives? The rule should be applied in both our professional and personal relationships. For example, she says, take the current pandemic we are facing. Some individuals had to shift their mindset and learn to respect employees in the food industry once our dining options were limited. When that happened, suddenly many began respecting and revering food deliverers more than ever before and were happy to see them in a way they never did before. But the truth is, the pizza delivery person, the sanitation worker, and all the employees in between should be respected just as much as professionals such as doctors, lawyers, politicians, and the like. Why? Because once again, we are all human. Professional titles we hold are distractors as it relates to the respect we should give one another. For example, take the phrase Black Lives Matter. The phrase was meant to convey the message that certain lives, Black lives in this case, matter just as much as all other lives. You need to understand that there is an implied message within Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter mantra, that all lives matter, because across the board, we are all referring to human lives. The phrase acts as a reminder that these lives matter too, not that they matter more than or to the exclusion of other lives. This is also why there needs to be, there is no need to respond. This is also why there is no need to respond to the phrase Black Lives Matter by saying all lives matter. That message is already incorporated into the intended meaning. The phrase Black Lives Matter simultaneously makes a statement that these particular lives are not being respected and that these lives should be respected just as much as other lives are respected. In other words, the underlying message of Black Lives Matter is that all human life matters. Now, contrast this phrase, she writes, Black Lives Matter, with the phrase Blue Lives Matter. And note that there is a difference. The difference is that while Black Lives Matter focuses on human lives, Black and all other lives, Blue Lives Matter seeks to highlight certain lives who hold particular professional titles. The message is that these individuals who work in this profession should be respected. Unfortunately, this position is problematic because remember, professional titles we hold are distractors as it relates to the respect we should give one another. Now, she writes, let me pause right here and ask this question. Do law enforcement officers matter? You better believe they do. We should all respect police officers and security officers and correction officers, first responders, and all those who work in law enforcement, 100%. But let's be crystal clear here. Individuals who work in law enforcement matter and should be respected because they're human, not because of the employment position that they hold. So in effect, when you create the phrase Blue Lives Matter in response to Black Lives Matter, you're creating a false narrative by elevating the reasoning why we should respect certain individuals based upon their position and not their life. When we do that, Aki notes, we create tension and we're now in the slippery slope of subjectivity. And as I've stated before, she writes, once we begin adding subjective factors to lives, we change the narrative and we will not find a common ground. This is dangerous. We should respect each other without conditions simply because we are all human beings. And we certainly should not wait until a pandemic is thrust upon us to realize this fact. This is why the golden rule is golden. The golden rule elevates us all, not a chosen few. If we follow the golden rule, we realize and understand that we are all deserving of dignity and respect as human beings, and not because any other factor we decide to add on it matters. Herein lies the essence, and this is where I come back in, of my reflection this morning. We should respect each other without condition simply because we are all human beings, and we certainly should not wait until a pandemic is thrust upon us to realize this fact. This is why the golden rule is golden. The golden rule elevates us all, not a chosen few. Here too is the essence of the difference that Dr. Douglas relates between justice as it is so often conceived in human terms and the vision of justice that is divinely aspirational, which continues to confront the limitations of our vision, both individually and collectively. The self-love in Selfless Love, the title of the reflection, my reflection this morning, is fundamental to this trajectory of justice. The ability of each of us and all of us to reflect on what we need to thrive without qualifying that thriving as a state that requires the subjugation of anyone else. It means that our sense of thriving is inextricably linked to the thriving of others, not to a system of diminishment, division, and domination. Here is where the role of faith communities reflecting an as-if possibility of the world and holding those that we elect to govern us accountable for the broadest understanding of what justice is, as more freedom and more possibility, is so important and fundamental to the survival both of our communities, but dare I suggest, the planet itself. Here is, I believe, what we are called to be as a community of faith. To live as if, to demonstrate the possibility, and to reflect a moral imagination that continues to hold those who govern us accountable for the vision of justice that they support and perpetuate. And I hope that in the coming days, weeks, months, and years, this vision will inspire us in all that we are and all that we do. Amen. And blessed be.
Our litany words today are by Carrie McDonald and Teresa Cooley. Love is hard.
Love for people, especially those who are different from you.
Love that says, I see you as a person.
Love that says, let your unique light shine in the world because each of our souls touches the divine mystery.
Love that says, we're on a journey together and my fate is tied up with yours.
Love that grabs you and won't let you go until your whole life is dedicated to siding with love.
Love that changes the world.
Love is hard. Do it anyway. Our closing hymn this morning is number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more
more
somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I wanna keep on till I find it. There is more peace
Our benediction this morning are the words of our colleague, Bill Hamilton Holloway. If I were to wish you peace, it would not be for long. It would be a peace to rest, to reflect, to make ready for the coming day, that the full force of your creativity and love might be released and shared. I do wish you peace.
From a distance, the earth is blue and green, and the
Once again, beloved, our worship has ended, but our service continues next with an opportunity for discussion and for support. I hope that you all find yourselves in a warm spot today, and whoever it is that you're rooting for this evening, may they find their way to the goal line. And for those of you who are not going to be ensconced in football this evening, I hope that you'll join either the Garden On team for its webinar on winter over gardening, and or our Side with Love Task Force, whose second discussion this evening of white supremacy in New England will happen as well. And I hope that we get to see each other in person very, very soon, or at least I get to view your shining face in the coming days. Blessings to all.